conversation. It's going to be a good one on communicating climate change. We have a wonderful panel with you today. I'll introduce them in a second. Just one note before we get started is that we will have a Q&A at the end. We'll of course do sort of the human interaction of putting hands up and you can ask questions. But if you want to submit the questions in a different way, you can scan the QR code on the right here and on the left over there, and it will take you to a web page where you can submit a question. There'll be pings through the air somehow onto an iPad at the back where I'll have them ask them when we get to the Q&A if you don't want to put your hands up yourself. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the moderator for the panel, the CEO of Climate Outreach, Rachael. And joining here for the conversation, we have Nick Oldridge, co-founder of the Climate Science Breakthrough. Burdon, CEO of Make My Money Matter. Alex Robinson, CEO of Hubbub. And last but not least, Poole, founder and CEO of Sport Positive.
We have 2 years to save the world. I'm sure you recognise those words said just a couple of weeks ago by Simon Steele, the UN climate chief, in a statement that was no doubt intended to grab headlines, and indeed it did. What wasn't reported nearly as much, and what I think needs to be reported far more, is what he said a couple of sentences later, which was this: let's consider for a moment what is up for grabs if we do make the next 2 years really count. A bold new national climate plans that will be a jobs jackpot and economic springboard to boost countries up the global ladder of living standards. And that, for me, I think encapsulates a lot of what we see in climate communications. I think we see far too much of the doom narrative and not enough of the second element of what Simon Steele was saying. So what we're here to talk about today is what we think makes great climate communication, maybe what makes not so great climate communication. What are the climate stories we need? Are we getting them? Do we need to think differently about the climate stories that we tell? Where are the general public on this? What do they know? What are they concerned about? And how do we try and turn that concern into action? So we're going to get through all that in the next 45 minutes and, solve it all. So fortunately, I've got a brilliant panel here to help us kind of interrogate and discuss some of these things. We want to make this session quite interactive, so I've asked the panelists to do a 3-minute introduction. You're going to see a bit of content, you're going to hear a wee bit about their work, and then we're going to turn to you for a bit of Q&A and try and just keep this feeling a bit more kind of conversational. So I am going to start by handing over to Nick.
Hi everyone, great to be here. My name is Nick Oldridge. I co-founded Climate Science Breakthrough along with Creative Comms Lab Utopia Bureau. So to start my 3 minutes, I'm going to jump in with a short clip of one of our films before I give you some background, if the technology is behind me.
What video, sorry?
Climate Science Breakthrough.
Our heads are in the way.
I'm Mark Masson, and I'm a Professor of Earth System Science at University College London.
I am Joe Brand, comedian, and people like me have to get involved in our English.
The climate crisis is progressing much faster than anticipated.
Translation: we're still going to hell, but we're getting there faster.
We are destabilizing our planet's climate system. Potentially everyone, everywhere, now faces a direct threat to their way of life.
Your house is on fire, but don't worry, the next flash flood should sort it out.
The irony is solar and wind power are now over 10 times cheaper than oil and gas.
With wind and sun power, we save money and don't die.
The reason governments are not transitioning fast enough is because the fossil fuel industry has a grip on many politicians. We all need to show up now before more irreversible damage is done.
Protesting doesn't work. That's the suffragettes and civil rights and gay rights and the right to weekend banking. So, let's go, boys and girls.
Okay, so that gives me under 2 minutes. Right, so as you can see there, what we're trying to do is move the social norms and spark greater action from the public when it comes to the climate crisis, which is an absolutely key ingredient if we're going to get the changes that we need at the pace we need. So we focus on climate scientists, but these people largely remain anonymous to the public, yet they have in their possession probably the most important message on the planet right now. So whilst we're touching on some of the scary elements, because you can't avoid it, the science is scary, we're not aiming to scare people, which is why we then use comedians. So comedians are people who can talk about difficult subjects, where they're trusted messengers, they represent us, and we can relate to them. And so if Joe Brand is saying, you know, demanding action, then maybe people will be thinking maybe I should be as well. So what our comedians do, and apologies if there are any climate scientists in the room, but they take the cold, dry, and it's sometimes boring climate science, and they translate it into more human and emotional language that's shareable and actionable. And we even move into the areas where people think that the problems that are facing us are very far away, they're going to happen in the future, they're going to happen in distant places, they don't affect me. And we try and bring that home to people's individual lives. But crucially, what we're trying to do is tell a story. Stories induce emotion, so we're trying to connect with people. And when we tell stories, our brains become more focused on what we're looking at. And let's face it, in 2024, focus is quite a hard thing to find. And so we go through this narrative, and then we arrive at the point of hope. And we're giving people hope in two areas. One, we have all the tools we need to solve this. And two, over to you guys. When people take tangible action, incredible things can happen, and that is the way we get the change we need. And just quickly to finish, what is extremely important is it's no good producing this great work if no one watches it. So a lot of effort goes into making it watchable, engaging, and memorable. So if you haven't seen our films, please check them out.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick. So we're going to come to Alex next, if that's okay.
Sure, thank you. Okay, I'm going to give you some principles of climate communication, and you can tell me if they're any good or not. So first of all, we should make it really scary, because people need to be shocked out of their daily lives and their complacency, right? Second, it's all about making sacrifices. We're all grown-ups here, just we can deal with the truth, right? Third, the facts speak for themselves. If people aren't listening, well, that's their fault. We need to say them louder. Fourth, we need to focus on the enormity of the problem. People don't grasp the whole scale of what we're dealing with here, so I think we need to focus on that. That's going to work. 6, we all should also focus on what individuals aren't doing, because there's a big gap between where they are now and where they need to be, and I think if we can just use a bit more guilt, then we should be able to help them close that. Finally, don't worry about the audience. We've got one problem, one solution. That's all we need. So those are the 7 classic principles of climate science. If you want to be a bit contrary, at Hubbub we've been experimenting with a different approach over the last 10 years or so. So let me give you the opposite. First of all, stay positive in your climate communications. Can be hard, but it's positivity that leads to action. Secondly, focus on the benefits to people. That could be saving money today, it could be a healthier future, but that's what will motivate people and get them on board. Third, you heard this from Nick, tell stories. It's stories that we're hardwired to respond to. Facts are just the supporting cast. Fourth, creativity, playfulness, great design. These are not optional extras or luxuries. It's essential to good communications. We're not competing with climate deniers. We're competing with every other piece of communications out there for people's attention. So you've got to be good. Fifth, be specific. Break it down into small chunks. What can you do? Move your pension. Freeze your leftovers. Everything in between, but small chunks. 6, show people other people like them. We are inspired and motivated by seeing our peers take action, and we often think that other people do and care less than they really do. And finally, meet people where they're at. Tailor communications to your audience, what they care about, their knowledge, their hopes, their fears, and that's how you could be effective. And if you want to see that in action, then at Hubbub, our work with business, with community groups, charities, government is all about bringing people together to inspire action that's good for the environment and for everyone. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, Alex. They always say that great communication has lots of message discipline and message repetition, and I think we're definitely getting that from the panel already, so that's great. Claire, over to you.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here with you all. Just a few things. So at Sport Positive, we basically use sport to drive action and ambition on climate change. So we're very sectorally focused around sport. And when we talk about climate communications in sport, it's very different to communicating with citizens at large. You're dealing with either participants or athletes or fans, and they're going to be involved with sport as a release from the rest of their life. So you can't hit them with climate science. You can't come at them with preachy messages. We have to meet them where they are. And whenever I think about climate communications, I think of a journalist I used to work with many moons ago when I was in the bioenergy space, and he had gone from being a sports journalist to being a climate journalist. And he basically said, football doesn't really matter, so we have to write about it like it's life and death. Because actually, if no sport happened anymore and there was no leagues and there was no scorecards, nothing would happen. So we have to write about it like it's so important, it's the most important thing to us. The flip of that is, the most important thing for us we have to write about in a way that's sexy, engageable, relatable, interesting, connect with people where they are, because otherwise it's too big, it's too scary, it's terrifying to deal with it. So how can we get to these people where they are? So a few notes from me. For us, in terms of climate communications, we have to lead with the co-benefits. We have to talk about physical and mental health. We have to meet people where they are. We have to talk about saving money. We have to make it interesting. We have to make it engaging. And that's the only stuff that penetrates. We have to be very careful with language in what we're talking about. In sport, you know, even in this room, I wonder if we took you out and asked you all to define net zero, you'd probably all come up with something slightly differently. When you're talking to sports participants, fans, and people around that, the difference between net zero, zero carbon, climate positive, climate neutral, it's overwhelming. So like, how can we get to people and talk to them locally, community driven, what they care about, their kids, their health, their time, their money? Let's get to them there. And on the language point, I was at a session yesterday with Chris Boardman, who's the chair of Sport England, and he made a really interesting point that I just wanted to share because I thought it was fascinating. He said, how interesting in terms of language would it be if, instead of talking about low emission zones and the pushback against that, if we had put that out as child safe zones? How maybe we would have come against the same issues, but maybe it would have been sort of hit and spoken about and campaigned against slightly differently, because who is against child safety? So again, let's be thoughtful in our knowledge. I think that's what I wanted to get across. How am I set? Trusted messengers was my last point on this. I think trusted messengers, sometimes it's not just the message, it's who it comes from. And that's why I think I followed Nick's work for ages, and like comedians and people we know and recognise and trust are the vectors for this. Unfortunately, it's not the scientists, but who can we use as the trusted messengers to get this through? That's a start from me.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Claire. And last but by no means least, Tony.
Thanks, and great to be here and great to see a crowded room. So I'm Tony Burdon, I head up Make My Money Matter. We're a campaign that tries to engage people, but also businesses and organisations with their money, whether it's their pensions or their bank, and to try and drive that finance into investment that tackles the climate crisis and doesn't cause it. So I'll run through a few things, but I just want to get over how we try to communicate. But the first thing I'll do is show a video. So if you could show the Make My Money Matter video, thanks.
Hello, my name is Olivia Conway, and on behalf of the fossil fuel industries, I would like to say a huge thank you for all your support this bumpy year. People like you have pumped billions of your hard-earned pounds into our gas and oil businesses. The cash from your pensions has helped us dig, drill and destroy more of the planet than ever before. We've even managed to build a few little wind turbines to keep Greta and her chums happy. Cute. You see, every little drop from your precious nest egg adds up. So while the global temperature may go up a teensy-weensy degree or two, our profits are literally soaring. And that's all thanks to you. So to guarantee us all a warmer, snuggier future, please keep sending your pensions our way. You know the drill. Oh, fucking hell. Okay, start again.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot to Olivia Coleman for that. Although I did once show one of these videos at a conference, and they asked me to show it and then walk on the stage. And it's the first time in my life I've walked onto a stage and had a standing ovation. It was amazing. So, you know, a bit of audience participation. Could you just raise your hand if you're worried about the climate crisis and you want to do more to act on it? That's pretty much everyone in the room. So raise your hand if you've got a pension. That's a lot of people in the room. So raise your hand if you know what the impact is of your pension on our planet, on the climate crisis. So it's a tiny number of people who know. So our research shows that UK pensions have got £88 billion invested in oil and gas companies. So that's your pensions, as Olivia was saying, are invested in those companies. Our pensions have got 300 billion invested in companies that are at high risk of driving deforestation. Again, that's our money being invested. So the thing for us in terms of communicating is a few things. One, we try and engage people with videos like this. It was seen 15 million times. It went viral. But using celebrity captures people a little bit. She's a very recognisable actress. It also gets you media coverage. The celebrity factor gets you in the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, gets you media coverage, and gets it shared, organically shared. But the use of a bit of evidence or a bit of shock wakes people up and helps them connect to what you're talking about. Our pensions are driving the climate crisis, and they're actually going to harm our retirement in the future. If you use a bit of humour, that's always a good thing. It's good to have a laugh, but again, it connects you. And always, if you link it to sort of feasible actions that you can take, you know, it connects people as well. So the fact that thousands of people have written to their pension funds, that hundreds of companies have tried to move their pension or complained about their pension, has meant that over 60 pension funds have committed to serious net zero targets. That's £1.5 trillion that will be invested in a better way than it was before. So that's how we communicate. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you so much. I think lots of kind of tips, insights, and I think kind of shared ground in terms of some of the ways that we think we can effectively communicate about climate change. I would urge you to add these tests when you're thinking about your climate communications, because I think it's in some ways easy to sit on panels like this and say this is what great climate comms looks like. It's not always the way that we behave in terms of some of the communications. So the kind of brief that we got for this session was also to try and have a bit of a think about kind of where the general public is at in terms of kind of attitudes to climate change, and think about kind of who might be receiving some of the communications that we're all talking about. So what I thought I'd do, Climate Outreach released a big new project last week called Britain Talks Climate. It was an update to some work that we did 4 years ago. So I'm just going to share a couple of headline insights from that. And then it'd be great to get a kind of first round of questions from you all, either a question about anything you've heard from any of the panel, or specifically around kind of where the general public or some segment of the general public might be at in terms of thinking about climate change. So just the headlines from that Britain Talks Climate study. So we did a survey, and then we did focus groups across different audience segments. And the thing that our research found was that the kind of appetite that people have for leadership on climate and nature is strong, and it's enduring. Like, despite everything that has happened in the world to us in the last 4 years, people's concern for climate change and their desire for leaders to be bold and to act on it is still there. It is still really strong for people. 60% of people in the UK think we should speed up or continue the pace that we're going to hit net zero, and the majority think that getting to net zero is going to be good for the UK. People see investment in climate as offering a source of hope and something that they can kind of reconnect. They can reconnect with their community, they can reconnect with the natural world. But obviously, like, this is what we are trying to do is fiendishly difficult. So I think the other big insight from our work was people don't want to be left alone with this. People feel like they understand the gravity of the situation, they understand the worry, but what they're not getting enough information about is, what does this mean for me in my life, in my community, in my workplace, and what can I do about it? And how can any small things that I do feel like I'm part of something much bigger? There was a big desire that taking action on climate should be a kind of collective endeavour, and it doesn't feel like that at the moment. So that's a few kind of headlines from us and maybe a few prompts, but I'd love to get some kind of thoughts and questions from you. Please raise your hands. I think there is some whizzy tech relating to a QR code, but I don't have the iPad that they come through on, so can we go with old school, put your hands up? Yes, gentleman over here in the green shirt. Shout if you're brave, go for it.
In various climate groups that I'm involved in, there is a conversation about divestment versus responsible shareholder behaviour. And I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Take a couple more questions and then we can, gentleman at the front. Go for it, yeah. Okay.
Hi, Ed Gemmell, leader of the Climate Party. Big compliments to Climate Outreach, by the way, because we use all of your stuff in what we do on our strategies. We use it all the time. It's brilliant stuff. And just to throw one in, is actually how we're communicating, which is slightly different to what everyone's saying. It's all about...
If I could, a question rather than a statement. Thank you.
To say, is this the right way to do it? So we're saying it's all about the money. You know, we get it by 2030, we lead the clean industrial revolution, we make loads of money for the UK, and then you don't even have to believe in climate change to want to see the earlier targets because it's money in the bank. That's the way we're communicating. What do you think of that?
Okay, great.
Can I just also add, we also have questions coming from the QR code, just so you know about this.
Okay, fab. If I take one more from the hand and then we'll do a round from the QR codes afterwards.
Question for all of you, but also to Nick. We're seeing a lot of climate misinformation across press, broadcast and online, and specifically attacks against climate scientists as well. So I'd like to know how the panel feel about that and what the pushback is and how you're dealing with the tsunami of climate misinformation. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got a question on divestment versus responsible investment. Is this all about the money and climate misinformation? Who would like to, Nick, do you want to pick up that last one to start with? And then if others want to come in on one or two.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised that by the time you put all this effort into getting people engaged, that they then stop and get confused, because it's a whole bewildering world of information. So on the one hand, we're told that our emissions don't matter, it's all China's fault. And then we're told that, but we're world leading, we've cut our emissions more than anybody, which is fantastic. Even then when we're not including all the data in the emissions because we moved all our manufacturing to China. So then we're told that heat pumps don't work. So there's a whole bewildering world of information. I think if you're going to be working in this space, you need to become adept at countering that, and you need to work out who the trusted suppliers of information are. It isn't always a climate scientist, but it often is. One of the issues the climate scientists have is they don't want to completely step out of their lane, so they'll talk about what they're expert at, but they won't often talk about, are heat pumps really effective? Can we really fully decarbonise? But they are starting to now, and there are a number of climate scientists I would advise you follow. But yeah, I think we need some fluency on our side of the debate. The other side is very well funded, very well organised, and they do everything in populist three-word slogans. So I think there needs to be a bit of pushback in how we counter all these narratives. It's a big job to do.
Thank you. Tony, do you want to take the divestment and responsible investment?
On divestment, when we launched our campaign, the pensions minister accused me of being a divestment campaign and shouted at me 3 times in the meeting. And we said we're not. And it's been a debate. We've been criticised in part for not being a divestment campaign. We've called on pension funds to use their shareholder power to drive change in oil and gas companies. But what we see is that that engagement, that shareholder power, has actually had very little impact. Because these oil and gas companies, 80% of shareholders vote for what they're doing. And a lot of those shareholders are short-term investors. So they want Shell to be an oil and gas company. They don't want it to be a renewable energy company. And they know in the next 5 years they're going to make a hell of a lot of money from oil and gas. They're not bothered what happens in year 10 or 20. What we're saying now to shareholders is, if that company is not serious about changing into a renewable energy company, which none of them are, their investments in renewables is just microscopic, is vote against the chair, vote against all directors in the company, vote against the auditors, vote against their business plan, and don't provide them any more finance. So no debt finance, your equity, you make it static, you fix it, so that company gets no more money, but you have a right to vote against all of them and get rid of the leadership of that company. So that may work. We're not sure. The evidence is divestment isn't necessarily working. So it's a really hard one. But none of those companies are transitioning. They're all making money from oil and gas, and that's all they want to do. And we know they're making lots of money from it as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tony. Alex, do you want to come in briefly on the, is it all about the money and the climate misinformation, and then we'll get a few more questions?
Sure. I think, so the misinformation we see maybe from a slightly different angle, which is more what I would kind of call soft cultural misinformation in the press. So recent examples, you know, The Independent ran an article about the supposed death of oat milk. The Times ran one about how the rich are taking all their plants out and replacing them with plastic, which is great. And there's this kind of cultural movement to suggest that the green revolution isn't happening and won't happen and it isn't good for people. And I think it's really important that we counter that with positive stories, not get sucked into like countering every single point, but show what's really happening, what the alternatives are, and sticking to the facts. And I guess that relates to your Climate Party question about focusing on the money as well, because maybe that is a good strategy for you winning votes. That's not my remit, but in terms of communication with the public, we need to be much broader about the things that touch their everyday lives, as well as the big picture, you know, what's the benefit of the revolution in general.
Thank you. Are there some questions on the coming through on there?
Yes, there is.
I don't know.
Yes, we've had three questions from the slider. So first one, for any panelists, how do you create a call to action that actually gets people up and moving? How do you translate message into action? The second one, there we go. Thank you. Is communicating via community groups, such as local sport teams, as an employee, or religious groups, more impactful in driving action than people seeing it alone? And the final one is describing any likely future climate reality often looks and sounds like doomerism, but how do we tell the difference between that and positive comms, and surely we must include the former in climate comms in some way? I can repeat any of them if I sort of bank.
No, I think I've got the gist of those. Brilliant. I love the call to actions that get people up and moving. I think people run whole consultancies and charge a lot of money to try and answer that question, but we'll see what we can throw at you in a couple of minutes. Claire, do you want to kick us off? I guess especially the kind of community question, but
yeah.
Go for any of them.
Yeah, so on the community side, I think what's really interesting from what we've done around climate communications within sport, and specifically in football, that if you get a Premier League footballer to do some videos around recycling or, you know, driving an EV or something, you get loads and loads of clicks and loads of likes, but then the next step of that, of an action, drops off massively. Where we've seen a lot more action and actually movement is within like football coaches in the community. So like where you've got that sticky relationship where it's a trusted member of the community that's looked up to, and they're talking about this. It's obviously, they're very, very different campaigns, but actually I think while you've got that outreach of those really big voices at a high level, which is amazing, and that's great to get out there, for us in sport, we've seen those community activations work really solidly in terms of translating very quickly into action.
Brilliant, thank you. And certainly one of the findings for us in our Britain Talks climate research, when we asked people, how would you most like to kind of talk about climate change? The thing that people said most of all was, I'd like to talk about this in my local community, in a setting like with people who I already trust, and I'd like to do it face to face. So I think that like that this can offer that kind of sense of connection and sense of kind of locality and community, I think is really important. Nick, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think we all have to be honest when you're trying to come up with campaigns like ours and the campaigns on the panel. Call to action is one of the hardest things, and I think climate communicators who go around saying they've got it sorted are not being straight with you, essentially, because there's no silver bullet answer. In your classic ad, you have a proposition, then there's a call to action. That's how you close it. That's what you want people to go off and do. What do we want them to do? Go and solve climate change? I mean, it's a really extraordinary big topic. And I think it also troubles people when they get to hear these headlines, like you mentioned right at the beginning, and then they get, start composting and switch the lights off. So they get massive big picture problem, really small detail thing over here. Now, I know full well that you can start there and build up from there, but in the communication we're doing, I think the answer is to try and reach them on an emotional level where other communication perhaps wasn't doing that. I came out of the insurance industry and met so many people whose job it is to think about risk who hadn't let it in as yet. And so if you are actively switching someone from being indifferent to being engaged, then I don't think you should panic about what they then go and do. Apart from leaving them with the thought, is go and find where your agency lies. Everyone has agency somewhere. And I think that's critical. It's quite hard to wrap that up, as you can see, in a single three-word slogan, but that is essentially where we're trying to push people to take them from thinking about all the other things they should be worrying about to applying their skills, their agency, their influence to the climate problem.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think, Tony, you gave us, I thought, in the answer to the last question, some really clear kind of steps and actions and kind of thoughts. So if you've got anything more on that question, and just we'll come for one final round of questions, but if there is anybody in the audience who has thoughts on this kind of how do we kind of tip concern into action from your work, I'd also love to hear those as well.
Quick things on call to action. Just put your hand up if you've written to your pension fund. It's like a couple of people. Right, so that Olivia Colman video, 15 million views. We only got 2,000 people writing to their pension fund following that. So it's quite hard to do, to make that effort, to know the name of your pension fund, to go and sit down and write to it. During our campaign, we've had hundreds of thousands of people write to their pension fund. The pension fund has to respond to you, which puts pressure on them. But what's been of interest to us is that getting 150 companies to commit to changing their pension, to getting a net zero pension, that got the pension funds really scared, because that's massive commercial pressure. If you're a pension fund with 5 million members, 10,000 writing to you, it's not a lot of people. So it's trying to work out strategically what's going to drive that change. But as individuals, we all do have agency. Lloyds Bank told me they're not stopping investing in oil and gas companies because they don't see enough demand asking them to change. Yeah. It's only 1% of their business. Wow. They make so much money from that 1%, but there's not enough demand for it. There's huge demand on Barclays to move because they're the worst in Europe, right? But they make so many billions, they're never going to move. They'll only move when it's law that they have to move. But someone like Lloyds could move, but it's not getting the demand. When you've got your mortgage, your loans, your bank, they say people get divorced more often than change bank. So it's tough. And it's the challenge for us, all of us.
Yep. I think we missed the last question about the kind of reality of climate change and then making sure we told a positive story.
The last question was describing likely future climate realities often looks and sounds like doomerism. How do we tell a positive story and know the difference between a positive story and doomerism, but also surely we must include some level of doomerism in any climate comms to know the problem?
I'm going to give that hot potato to Alex and then we'll come for a final round of questions.
Thanks. I think there's a couple of things here. One is, you don't have to think that every piece of communication has to do every job. In the same way, not every organisation has to cover every job. So I think it's really important that there are people out there who are agitating, who are showing the scale of the problem, who are focusing on that. That is a role that needs to be played. I think, at least historically, it's been overplayed. You also need organisations and communications that are focusing on the positive, on being constructive and what you can do. Neither of these things negates the other one. They're part of a system that is changing and raising people's awareness and then giving them a chance to shift what they believe they can do and their hope for the future. So you just need to understand what the job is and what tool you're using for that job, whether as an organisation or as a campaign, and then make it appropriate for that channel for that moment.
Brilliant, thank you. Can I just have a time check, because I know we started a bit late.
Yeah, we've got 10 minutes.
Perfect. So can we have a kind of final round of thoughts on calls to action and then further questions? One at the front here.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm struck by the paradox that we've never succeeded so much in the energy transition. We installed last year, in a week, more renewable generation than in a year, 15 years ago. And at the same time, it seems like the current discourse is very, very negative. So how do you square that? So how do you square that, and what can you do about it? I mean, is that a success on our part collectively or a failure on our part collectively as communicators? Thanks.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
We've had a few more submitted, and there's one that I think was probably submitted at the back of something, Tony, you were saying about Lloyd's Bank. That any of the panelists have an experience of landing climate messages with senior stakeholders in corporate businesses to the point that they do act. More we have submitted. Making climate change less complex is also building a new wave of activism that assumes transition is a piece of cake. Where is the educational piece?
Great. So we've never succeeded so much on renewable energy. How do we tell that story better? How do we land climate messages with kind of important, influential stakeholders? And And the final question about local action.
Making climate change less complex is also building a new wave of activism that assumes the transition is a piece of cake. Where is the education piece? Are we trying to make it too easy, the sort of idea of transition?
Are we making it too easy? Okay. Who would like to kick off? Alex, do you want to start? Take your pick.
There's so many pieces there. I'll go with the last one, which may be the hardest one. I think it's a really tricky question, that one. And it is, if I'm honest, it's something that I wrestle with, because you need to make things feel possible. But you can't pitch it so that people think, the classic is, I do my recycling, job done, right? And actually, if you look at polling, that often is what comes out of it. People don't understand what it is that makes the most difference from their actions, and they feel that doing some small good things gives them permission to not do larger, more impactful things. So I think I don't think there's a silver bullet for this. I think it's constant tiller tapping to figure out what's that balance between empowering people, giving them opportunities, showing them what their peers are doing all of that good stuff, but also being realistic about the scale of the challenge and which other actors in the system also need to move. And this is why we're all here, right? Because this communications is super difficult, and I don't think anyone has totally nailed that across everything, but certainly it's something that we think about all the time.
Thank you. Claire?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and it intersects with this question as well about scale. What was brilliant 15 years ago is now, kind of like day to day, and it hasn't shifted. I'm always obviously coming at everything from the sport vector, but we struggle constantly with communicating around meeting organisations where they are versus instilling urgency, because 15 years ago the sports sector was like, we've put LED lights in our stadiums, brilliant. Whereas if you're starting there now, well, sorry, the challenge and the crisis is massive. That's not good enough anymore. So I think within the communication, there's always this trying to meet audiences and people where they are, and wherever they are, try and get them to be as ambitious as they can in that moment. It's obviously different at an individual level to a corporate level, but also understanding the impact of actions as well. I don't know if anyone saw Lorraine Whitmarsh's session before. Lorraine's outstanding, and a lot of that, the research they do shows that individuals recycling, 0.1% of your footprint, take one less flight a year, 10% of your footprint. Again, if we're trying to encourage that what we sort of think about as like scope 1 and 2, or direct personal emissions, that is nowhere near as big as the influence we can all cascade in our personal, professional and online lives. So like, how do we tap in to that through the things we're interested in and try and move the needle as quickly as possible on that?
Brilliant, thank you. Tony?
There was this thing about interacting with senior stakeholders. What we did at the end of last year is rank the top 20 UK pension funds against a whole range of climate commitments. And then that got published last week in Which magazine. It's online as well. That absolutely terrified all of those pension funds because they're being compared now. It's the first time in Britain that you can check how green is your pension fund. And the ones at the bottom, the serious ones at the bottom, one of them, they've got 5 million people saving in that pension. They scored 0.9 out of 10. Absolutely horrific. They've now published 2 new policies, one on responsible investment and one on trying to tilt their portfolio to be greener. So they're acting now. And as we talk to others, they are all publishing new policies. So that you can have this impact, and it's backed by the media spotlight, it's backed by the thousands of people writing, it's backed by businesses wanting something better. But getting that out there to all people, to rank them, is really, really powerful. Just on the sort of positive message, there is a lizard brain, this fight, flight, freeze thing. And when we've tried to do messages about wind farms and your pension, they don't land, really. It's the ones where there's a bit darkness there, but we have agency to change it. That gets people acting. If you said we can have a wind farm and they'll, what do we want? Wind farms. That people don't get off their seat, right? So there's something there, I think.
Nick, and especially if you could pick up that question about kind of renewable energy and the success and
the question from the front is interesting, because isn't it a bitch being up against the law of physics, eh? So if this was the year 2000, we'd be looking at 2% cuts a year, and that would do it nicely. It could probably all be sorted out on a sort of nerdy policy level, and we wouldn't really have to get involved apart from do our recycling. But I think, and I might be out of date, I think we're looking at 10 or 11% now, just because we've dallied for so long. And so we have these incredible achievements. That's a real hard balance to strike, because they are still incredible. But we can't not put them up against what the target is. And I think, and this confused me for a while until I heard something by Kevin Anderson, this is where we need better fluency in our media commentators. So when the government stated that I think our grid is up to 50% renewables, oh, we're 50% the way there, this is fantastic. Well, our grid is 20% of our energy, and we've got half of it switched. So we've got 90% to go. So I think not scaring people, not being a doomer, but we have to add context. So perhaps there's a campaign there to get journalists more adept at being able to debate all this stuff.
I think there's something I would add too about this stuff is happening now, and I think there's something about how we bring people with us, which is to say, like, this stuff is already underway. Like, this, we're not talking about a transition that is going to happen in the future. This is happening all around us, and I think those stories we don't hear enough about. So how can it make me feel much more like people like me are already doing this, which I think is going to kind of help us inspire action. We just got a couple of minutes left, so I am going to ask each of the panel if they can just kind of close with any kind of very, very brief final reflections. But we were also asked to give you one action we would like you to take away with you. So I didn't pre-warn them about this, so it's a wee bit unfair. But yeah, if there's one thing you would like the audience to take away with them based on the discussion we've had today, who's going to be bold enough to go first?
I'm
Claire
happy
is.
to, yeah,
Brilliant.
I'm happy to.
Thank
I'm happy
you.
to. I mean, in terms of a takeaway for me, I think the fact that everyone's in this room, we're having this conversation, is amazing about this communication. For me, in terms of substantive takeaways of like what you can do for me, I'm massively energized by the people on this panel, people like Lorraine Whitmarsh, Kevin Anderson. There's so many incredible people out there to follow, and there's so much information that you can then use through your own vectors to put that through your own industry, your own agency, and your own connections and influence. So I think take amazing resources that are out there and apply it in the ways you can, and also try and make it relatable, accessible, easy to understand, and straightforward, and always make sure that call to action's there. Although it's not always going to manifest, still keep it there. Keep ticking away at getting things moving.
Brilliant. Alex?
So in terms of things to take away, well, Rachel, you might not plug your own work, so the Britain Talks Climate
Yeah.
Research.
I didn't ask him to do that, by the way.
Incredible.
Do take a look at if you want to understand where your fellow citizens, Britons are on these issues, because it's going to provide you with a great foundation. In terms of like each person in the room, I always think this is a bit of a trick question. The thing that you should do is to find the thing that really energizes you, that you can relate to and that you want to do and can sustain, rather than the thing that you're told has the particular highest impact. Because what we need is everyone doing stuff, and the stuff that people are going to do is the stuff that they enjoy, that they find motivating, that they can do with their peers and things like that. So find whatever that is for you.
Brilliant, thank you.
The problem with that is that no one likes to think about money.
Well, some people think about it quite a lot.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah, some do. So I talked about pensions a lot, but if you're with Barclays or HSBC or Santander, please leave them, all right? Go to the Co-op or Triodos. If Co-op or Triodos don't give you the services you need, go to NatWest or Lloyds. That will have a massive impact. And a quick one, don't vote for a politician or a political party that says cut the green crap, like David Cameron did all those years ago.
Thing I'd like you to The thing I'd like you to take away, firstly, is that I'll buy a pint for anyone who can give me the telephone number of a very famous US comedian, because we were planning a film over there. So yes, if you can make me an introduction, I will deliver. The second point is, yes, find your agency, but go for areas that interest you, excite you, that you feel connected with. But I'd like to add to that point, and look for where the inertia is in those areas. Look for the hidden handbrakes, because as we said earlier, the solutions are on the table, the technology is there, the knowledge is there, there's lots of people willing it to go right, but there are all these push points coming from vested interests, coming from apathetic politicians. So find that in your sphere, find out how you can unblock those and solve that inertia.
Amazing, thank you. We are at time, so I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you for coming. Thank you for the brilliant and challenging questions, but a massive thank you to all the panellists for their fantastic wisdom. Thank you.
And thank you, Rachael, for excellently moderating.
Thanks, Rachael.
So hot, I could expire.